Well, a new day and a new executive order. So I'm going to tell you about this one. It's got to do with the International Criminal Court. So hang in there, folks. I'll be right back. Hey everybody, this is Deb with Truthification Chronicles, and oh yeah, the International Criminal Court. We're going to get to that in just a second. Let me show you a couple things first, and then we'll get into it, okay? So to start out with, this is a tweet by Richard Grenell that I think is something that's not out there in the news and should be, because the NSC is quietly making history. This is Trump's NSC, and why is it? Because it's a historic first. Under Trump, half of National Security Council leaders are women. So why is that not in the news? Why aren't we hearing about this? Well, they can't say anything good about Trump, but 12 of the 24 directorates are now female-led. And here's the Federal article. It's a good article. So, yep, there we go. That's what's happening, and this is historic. But, again, not going to be saying it in the mainstream media. Well, this is also going on, and I wanted to bring it to your attention because I don't know if you're familiar with Brandon Straka, but he's really the founder of the walkaway movement. And he wasn't a conservative at all. He's gay, and so he was not part of the Republican Party. He was a Democrat. But then he started seeing what the Democrats were really doing, and that they were just using gay people, they were using blacks, they were using any minority just to get votes. And so he woke up and he said, I'm walking away from the Democrats. And this is really what's been going on. If you look for hashtag walkaway, you'll see that there are a lot of people involved in this movement. In fact, he even has a YouTube channel that has like testimonials of people. And so I wanted to show you what was going on here with him. The college that asked me to be a commencement speaker, for whom I created the Class of 2020 video I was preparing to release to you all today, contacted me to say they did not add my speech to the ceremony because it had imagery of me shaking Donald Trump's hand and me on Fox News. I was told that teachers had threatened to resign if my speech was sent out to the students. I told the head of the school that I wanted the right to face these teachers. Today I attended a virtual meeting with the faculty and told them that I would not remove the images from my speech. It is an honor to shake hands with the sitting president. It is an honor to create something that garners national news attention. This is part of my story. I stood my ground and await the final decision on whether or not my commencement video will be shared with the students of this school. But regardless, it is my story to share with all of you, and I will be releasing the video to the public. So he's got some really good videos out there. Like I said, a lot of people have decided to walk away from the Democrat Party in droves. And so when they try to tell you that the Democrat Party is alive and doing well, they're not really. There's a lot of people who have walked away, and a lot more all the time, because this defund the police thing, sorry, it's just not gonna fly with a lot of people, because we all know what happens when there's no police around. The bullies take over, and nobody wants that. So anyway, I just thought I'd share that with you because, yes, another one, and Ivanka Trump, I saw one on that. Somebody sent that to me, that she was refused to be able to speak somewhere, and it caused a lot of problems. This is just crazy that people are silencing free speech. Why can't we hear both sides and then make up our own minds? If you cannot afford to hear the other side, then you don't know your own beliefs well enough. And you need to be more certain of what you believe, because when you know what you believe, you don't have to be threatened by people expressing some different opinion. I know sometimes it's annoying to hear the same things over and over again, but you shouldn't be threatened to the point where you want them silenced. And when you want them silenced, there is just no freedom of speech if everyone's not free. If only half the people in the country are free, then that's not freedom of speech at all. Well, this came out today, and this is from NPR. I don't usually refer to them, but they did have an article on it. And they said, Trump greenlights sanctions against International Criminal Court investigators. Okay, so what the deal is there's this International Criminal Court that's at The Hague in the Netherlands. And, we are not part of that. We have not entered into the agreement to let them rule on us because we don't believe that anybody in the rest of the world should be judging American citizens. If an American citizen is guilty of something, then the U.S. should be putting them through our justice system. So this was updated tonight. 2 months after the International Criminal Court greenlighted an investigation into potential war crimes by U.S. troops in Afghanistan, the Trump administration is pushing back. President Trump has imposed economic sanctions against court officials directly engaged with any effort to investigate or prosecute United States personnel without the consent of the United States. And this is the executive order we're going to look at. So the rest of it just kind of quotes from it. And so we're just going to go to the document itself. But before we do that, I want to show you this.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining me today, 2 days in a row. And thanks to Secretary Esper, Attorney General Barr, and National Security Advisor O'Brien for being with me on this important occasion. As many of you know, I have an important affection for our servicemen and women. I'm a veteran myself. And here's a scenario that I think about a lot. Imagine an American soldier, sailor, airman, Marine, or an intelligence officer is on leave with his or her family, maybe on a beach in Europe. And over the course of 2 decades or more, this soldier honorably defended America in Anbar province and Kandahar, taking down terrorists. Then suddenly that vacation turns into a nightmare. The European country's national police takes that soldier into custody, detaining him or her on politically motivated charges. A prison sentence abroad is a distinct possibility. A spouse behind bars for defending freedom, a son or daughter robbed of their mom or dad, all on the initiative of some prosecutor in the Netherlands. Making sure this doesn't happen is the essence of American first foreign policy. Sadly, this isn't a hypothetical. This nightmare could become reality if the International Criminal Court follows through with its ideological crusade against American service members. Many of you might recall back in November of 2017, the court's Office of the Prosecutor announced its intention to investigate our brave warriors for alleged crimes arising from counterterrorism missions in Afghanistan. It wasn't a prosecution of justice, it was a persecution of Americans. The ICC cannot subject Americans to arrest, prosecution, and jail. The U.S. is not a party to the Rome Statute that created the ICC, and even if a prosecution were to proceed, it would make a mockery of due process. There's no requirement for unanimity for a conviction. The prosecution can rely on hearsay to obtain a conviction. There's no real guarantee of a speedy trial. And instead of facing a jury of one's peers, it's a panel of judges who aren't subject to any American accountability. We have responded anyway, the way a responsible nation must, by condemning the investigation, by suspending cooperation with the court, and denying visas to those most directly responsible for going after our personnel. We welcomed growing criticism and calls to reform the court from countries like the UK, Germany, and Japan. For a time, it looked like the IC might do the right thing and kill the investigation. But last spring, the pretrial chamber unanimously rejected the prosecutor's request to open the investigation. But unfortunately, then in the spring and March, the appeals chamber overturned that sound judgment and gave a green light to the current investigation, effectively eliminating constraints on the prosecutor's office ability to launch new investigations of Americans in the future. We cannot, we will not stand by as our people are threatened by a kangaroo court. And indeed, I have a message to many close allies around the world. Your people could be next, especially those from NATO countries who fought terrorism in Afghanistan right alongside of us. We're also gravely concerned about the threat the court poses to Israel. The ICC is already threatening Israel with an investigation of so-called war crimes committed by its forces and personnel in the West Bank and in the Gaza Strip. Given Israel's robust civilian and military legal system and strong track record of investigating and prosecuting wrongdoing by military personnel, it's clear the ICC is only putting Israel in its crosshairs for nakedly political purposes.
Okay, so that's the situation. And, it really is not any specific person. It's not any specific incident. It is just a general blast against our own servicemen that have been in Afghanistan or other places. So this is something very serious, and I can understand. Now, this whole thing, it was only about 18 minutes long, but I tell you, it was well worth watching. And you get Barr up there, and they're all standing together. And what I really appreciate about the Trump administration is that they are pulling together here. And, these are top guys in their field. You have the Secretary of State, you have the Secretary of Defense, and you've got the Attorney General coming together and saying, yep, this is what's going to happen. We're not going to stand for this. We're going to stand for Americans, and Americans that need to be tried will be tried in legitimate courts in the United States. So I wanted to share that with you. And then here's the executive order itself, because this is an executive order on blocking property of certain persons associated with the International Criminal Court. And he says, by the authority vested in me as president by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, including the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, that's going to be important in a minute, the National Emergencies Act of the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1952, and Section 301 of Title III United States Code, all of its codes and everything. And he says, I, Donald J. Trump, President of the United States of America, find that the situation with respect to the International Criminal Court, ICC, and its illegitimate assertions of jurisdiction over personnel of the United States and certain of its allies, including the ICC prosecutors' investigation into actions allegedly committed by United States military, intelligence, and other personnel in or relating to Afghanistan, threatens to subject current and former United States government and allied officials to harassment, abuse, and possible arrest. These actions on the part of the ICC, in turn, threaten to infringe upon the sovereignty of the United States. See, Trump always gets that sovereignty in there whenever he can, and the globalists hate it, every bit of it. And so he always tries to do that. And he says, and impede the critical national security and foreign policy work of the United States government and allied officials, and thereby threaten the national security and foreign policy of the United States. The United States is not a party to the Rome Statute, which Pompeo talked about, has never accepted ICC jurisdiction over its personnel, and has consistently rejected ICC assertions of jurisdiction over United States personnel. Furthermore, in 2002, the United States Congress enacted the American Service Members Protection Act, which rejected the ICC's overbroad, non-consensual assertions of jurisdiction. The United States remains committed to accountability and to the peaceful cultivation of international order, but the ICC and parties to the Rome Statute must respect the decisions of the United States and other countries not to subject their personnel to the ICC's jurisdiction, consistent with their respective sovereign prerogatives. There he gets that sovereign in again. The United States seeks to impose tangible and significant consequences on those responsible for the ICC's transgressions, which may include the suspension of entry into the United States of ICC officials, employees, and agents, as well as their immediate family members. The entry of such aliens into the United States would be detrimental to the interests of the United States, and denying them entry will further demonstrate the resolve of the United States in opposing the ICC's overreach by seeking to exercise jurisdiction over personnel of the United States and our allies, as well as personnel of countries that are not parties to the Rome Statute or have not otherwise consented to ICC jurisdiction. I therefore determine that any attempt by the ICC to investigate, arrest, detain, or prosecute any United States personnel without the consent of the United States or of personnel of countries that are United States allies and who are not parties to the Rome Statute or have not otherwise consented to ICC jurisdiction constitutes an unusual and extraordinary threat to the national security and foreign policy of the United States. And I hereby declare a national emergency to deal with that threat. So he's taking a step to declare a national emergency. Now, there's a reason for that, and we'll get to it in just a minute. I hereby determine an order, and then here's where he sets it down. All property and interest in property that are in the United States, that hereafter come within the United States, or that are or hereafter come within the possession or control of any United States person, of the following persons are blocked and may not be transferred, paid, exported, withdrawn, or otherwise dealt in any foreign person determined by the Secretary of State in consultation with the Secretary of the Treasury and the Attorney General to have directly engaged in any effort by the ICC to investigate, arrest, detain, or prosecute any U.S. personnel without the consent of the U.S. Okay, when he goes on with this, it basically is saying if anybody from the ICC wants to try to prosecute Americans, it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. And their properties are going to be seized. That's what's going to happen. They're going to lose whatever. And it also says that it can't be somebody who is directly engaged in any effort by the ICC to investigate, and to have directly engaged in any effort by the ICC to any of the allies, to investigate any of the allies, which would be Israel right now, and to have materially assisted, sponsored, or provided financial, material, or technological support for, or goods or service to, or in support of any activity described in this subsection of this section, or any person whose property and interests in property are blocked pursuant to this order. Okay, now what I think he's setting up here, all right, is that anybody who donates money to the ICC to try to get them to prosecute some Americans for war crimes or whatever are going to be in big, deep doo with our country. And I think it's setting things up. So anybody who supports the ICC against the United States could very well be labeled as an enemy combatant. Okay, because they are giving aid to somebody that has been declared. I mean, he set up this national emergency and everything. So I think it sets up the ICC as a possible enemy. I'm not 100% sure on that, but the person I'm thinking of is George Soros. And the reason, maybe this is because this was on my mind. American Woman sent me this. Thank you so much. She tagged me. And this was a documentary that is really, really good. Okay, it's long. I forget. It's over an hour. And when I saw it, I hate to get videos where people say, you gotta see this. And then it's an hour or more long. And I just kind of go, oh, I don't know if I've got the energy to do this. But this one was worth it. Okay, it really was. I did put it on a little faster speed, but still the material in it is excellent. And it goes through and lays down all the different revolutions, really, that Soros has been involved in, his organizations. Of course, it's not him directly giving the money. It's his Open Society Foundation, and then all the other little shill companies and things that he's got set up. So it's not just him. It's, it doesn't always look like George Soros is behind it, but he usually is. And there is an MO that they use when they're taking over these countries. So when I saw, I watched this first, and then when I saw the executive order, I thought, I wonder if there's some connection here, because this is what Soros is really doing. I think most of you know that the Black Lives Matter, a lot of that funding is coming from Soros. And, I will do a video on that, but not tonight, because I had a lot of things that I was finding out about, various aspects of it, and the Act Blue organization. So I just don't have time to put all that together. And this would have been like a really horribly long video, and I'm not up to that tonight. So this is a really good video for you to watch, this one right here, from Ukraine to the States. And it will show you kind of what's going on here was instigated by the money of George Soros. And so that's why when I was reading through this executive order, I couldn't help but wonder if this was going to be a way to block George Soros from financing any of the ICC against different countries that he doesn't like and that he's trying to tear down and rebuild in his own image. So I'm not sure. It not only could set it up so that he's blocked from doing it, but if he does go ahead and send money their way for that purpose, then, and it could backfire and be something they could prosecute then, which wouldn't that be wonderful? You know, I kind of hope that's the first arrest right there, because that would shock the world, because he has his fingers in so many countries. Y'all don't know. Watch that video. So then I wanted to kind of end on this in a little clip with Barr. This is very important to remember. Soon, DNI Ratcliffe has declassified documents related to Russiagate and ordered them sent to Congress. Big release expected imminently. So stuff is happening. And I also want to remind you that on the 12th, which is when this should come out, that's when General Flynn's judge has to have the judge's lawyer argue against dismissing Flynn's case. So that should be interesting. I haven't had a chance to read the Gleason brief that was put in, the amicus curiae, but I have seen a few little comments about it, and it just doesn't have any basis. It really doesn't. So anyway, that was very encouraging to see that I do think Ratcliffe is going to try to get as much out as he possibly can, because he was a really big advocate for getting this stuff out to the people before, when he was a congressman. So I'm pretty sure that he's going to make sure this happens. So I'm excited. It's still kind of hard to think of him as the DNI now, but I'm going to really miss him in the hearings. He always did such a great job. But anyway, so then I have this little clip for you.
District of Columbia. I know you can't get into specifics, but the DOJ Inspector General identified this top FBI lawyer who fabricated evidence in order to justify this warrant against Carter Page to spy on him. We know that's a crime, yet there haven't been any charges yet. Is that person still working at the FBI?
No.
And are there charges?
Well, we can't discuss, future charges, but I have to say that I do find it a little irritating, the propensity in the American public on all sides of the political spectrum, when they see something they think could be a criminal violation, saying, why hasn't this person been indicted yet? Why hasn't this person indicted? Why? And, there's the old saying that the wheels of justice grind slow, and they do grind slow because we have due process and we follow the process. But people should not draw from the fact that no action has been taken yet, that means that people are going to get away with wrongdoing.
So very important to remember. There we go. I think we have to understand that we do have due process, and this was the whole reason for the executive order against the ICC, because there was not going to be due process, and we need to make sure that when we accuse people, we have the evidence to back it up. All right. And so that's really what Barr is trying to do, and I think Durham is doing. They're trying to make sure that their cases are built very meticulously, so these people who are guilty of crimes are not going to be able to get off on some technicality or on some stupid loophole. So it's really important for the cases to be built well and solidly. And that's what's been happening for a very long time. It's just there are so many cases. It takes a while. And again, we're only going to get one shot at doing this. if this does not happen and these people walk free, then what you're seeing in the streets in these cities is going to happen all over. And our country will either erupt in a civil war with a lot of bloodshed, or it will be lost. And that's really what we're up against. That's why everything has to be done perfectly. All the T's crossed, all the I's dotted. That's it. So that's what I've got for you on this one. I want to thank you for stopping by, and I'll see y'all later.